Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Skype sessions. I'm David, and today we have a poet on for Poetry Month. We have Rob Jones, who wrote this lovely book and sent me a copy. And so I invited him on to a Skype session to talk about it. Rob, how's it going?
It's excellent, David. I really appreciate you having me on with Pints with Jack. This is a tremendous honor and a privilege, and I'm truly grateful. Thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome. Would you mind just introducing yourself to our viewers?
Yes, as you said, I'm Rob Jones. I'm originally from Murfreesboro, Illinois, and now my wife and family and we reside in Tennessee. I am a musician, a published author and poet with 4 books to my credit. I have a children's book entitled Here Comes the Night, a romance novel entitled Bad Boys of the Kingdom. And a couple of weeks ago, I released my second children's book entitled Poetic Pete, and I'm excited about that book. And a poetry book that was released in April of this year entitled Re-Enchanted that we will be reading and talking about today.
Wonderful. And this is a C.S. Lewis podcast. So what has C.S. Lewis's involvement in your life been? Where did that fit in?
Yes, I encountered Lewis as an adult. When I first heard about Lewis, my former pastor quoted a quote from him from the book Weight of Glory in his sermon, and the quote was, "Our Lord finds our desires not too strong but too weak. We are half-hearted creatures, fooling about with drink and sex and ambition when infinite joy is offered us." And it floored me. And when it was loaded in my conscience, I was overwhelmed by that. So Lewis was on my radar. Some friends of mine recommended different books, so I bought The Weight of Glory, and I've been a convert ever since, and just buying his books and immersing myself in his works. Till We Have Faces is my favorite book, and I know you and Andrew and Matthew have this ongoing debate about which one is Lewis' best book, and unfortunately, I agree with Andrew, but
That's
I
okay.
digress.
That's okay. But why? I'm interested. Why is Till We Have Faces your favorite? What is it about that book?
It just enchanted me. The story. I love the story of Psyche and um, the God and just the whole story just enraptured me, and it just had some quotables that I love, and I just love myth. So I mean, it was everything that I adore and I love. Just a brilliant book.
Okay, I will
So,
allow it.
oh, thank you. And by the way, I love the bit of whenever Andrew mentions "Till We Have Faces," you guys have to drink. Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, we have the lightest of sips now because he's doing it an awful lot.
Yes, but my favorite passage or scene in Lewis's books is the Magician's Nephew when Aslan sings Narnia into existence. And when I first read that, I encountered the numinous or the bright shadow. It really moved me, and so that's one of my favorite scenes in all of his books.
Have you read The Silmarillion?
No, I haven't.
If
That's
that's your
some to.
favorite scene in Narnia, I suggest getting a copy of The Silmarillion or just the first chapter and just read that because Tolkien, he also has a very similar scene where Eru Ilúvatar, who is Aslan, who is God in The Silmarillion, creation is also birthed through song. I think it's probably my favorite part of the entire Silmarillion, which wait till they load all of your really good stuff at the front. I'm loving more of it now that I've reread it a few times. But if that's your favorite scene in Narnia, I would suggest checking out the first chapter of the Silmarillion.
I will definitely do that. Thank you.
Well, we
Absolutely.
covered Lewis. What about poetry? Where did that come into your life? Because the thing I've said
Mm.
throughout this poetry month is that I've spoken to lots of people who, when they find out that we're doing this, they would say something to the effect of, oh, we did a little bit of that in high school. And maybe not even then, but they haven't touched it since. So we have a lot of people who aren't used to reading poetry, let alone writing it. So how did that find a place in your life?
For me, the medium of songwriting um, was the catalyst, was the impetus to get me into poetry. But I always had a innate ability to write rhymes. Even in grade school and junior high, I used to write these little love poems to girls and everything. And I just, so it was
Smooth.
always within me. Yeah, it was always in me. And but it was music or the craft of songwriting that ushered me into poetry and to take it more seriously. And I remember buying my first poetry book, which was Shakespeare's sonnets, and
Mhm.
it overtook me, and I became so enamored with poetry. You know, that's what really done it for me. And when I got older, I started reading the romantics, Keats and Coleridge and Wordsworth, then other poets like John Donne, Emily Dickinson, and Yeats, C.S. Lewis, Maya Angelou, well, Malcolm Guy. He's my favorite poet. Um, he is for me what George MacDonald was for Lewis, and I always
Mhm.
call Malcolm a wizard of words. And I just love his YouTube channel, A Spell in the Library, where he has his pipe and drink, and he started reading poetry, and he gets so animated and electric, and he's just so delightful and charming in those episodes, and he's just such a stimulating and high thinker as well, very engaging.
A wizard of words, and he looks like a wizard. He's got the
He
beard for it
sure
and everything.
does. I know. I hear like when they announce him or describe him, it's like Bilbo Baggins meet um, John Donne or George Herbert meets Jerry Garcia, and you have Malcolm. Yeah, he's a wonder.
Mm. Well, would you mind telling us a little bit about this book? You wrote it. Where did it come from? And what would people find if they looked inside? What sort of forms? What sort of topics?
Yes, Re-Enchanted, my book. It's a collection of thought-provoking poems and prayers that elucidates and give insight to the importance of the imagination as a critical faculty that bodies forth meaning and gives an inkling to transcending reality and beauty that we all ache and long for. And again, Malcolm Guide, always talking about the importance of the imagination and how the imagination is just as important as reason, and they're given to us by God so we can come to know and understand truth. And stories, music, poetry, they can be used as vehicles to body forth meaning and communicate truth in a unique and a powerful way. And that's what I try to accomplish in my book. I have sonnets in there. I have rhyme and lyrical form of poetry, and I just love the traditional form of poetry. Shakespearean sonnets are what I love to read, and Petrarchan sonnets or Italian sonnets I love to read as well. But I do want to try to stretch myself and get into some more long narrative poems and free verse and blank verse and to grow as a poet. But my book is just more or less rhyme and lyrical poems with some sonnets that touches on religion and spirituality and the inner struggles that we have as humans, and also romance as well.
Hmm. Well, I think it'd be really good if people could hear some of them. And when you first reached out to me, you shared with me a poem that was dripping with Lewisian imagery. So maybe we could start there. If you could
Oh,
read
thank
that
you.
to us and tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, the poem entitled "The Sweetest Longing," and it was inspired by reading C.S. Lewis' account of experiencing um, an intense desire and a longing for beauty, which he can never truly attain in this world. And he called this Sehnsucht, which is a German word that is a word for desire that's never attainable, and it's painful, but yet it's pleasurable. And and the sentiment of that is echoed in the passage of "Till We Have Faces," where Psyche expresses her longing to Oriel, And could I read that? That's that section from that book, if you don't mind, before I read my poetry.
Sure.
Yes, I just love this right here when Psyche is telling Oriole, about her deepest desire and longing. She says, "The sweetest thing in all my life has been longing to reach the mountain, find the place where beauty came from, my country, the place where I ought to have been born. Do you think it all meant nothing? All the longing for home, for indeed it now feels like not like going, but like going back." And I just love that imagery there, and how she expresses her longing for home, and and so this is something of that nature as well. It's called the sweetest longing. My heart's ensnared by beauty that she wooing, lassoed with longings of silver truths pursuing. A deep ache is conceived, now that truth and story converge. My spirit can barely bear it to give birth to this mythic urge. An elusive desire swept over me like a gentle autumn breeze, then vanished like lightning. Now I'm undisguised on my knees. Oh, how I yearn to lay unclad beneath my numinous love, clothed in agape's embrace, where aesthetic mysteries are uncovered. My soul pangs and bleeds from earthly stabs of joy. Ethereal yearnings are hindered. Prayers of solace I now deploy. Glimpses of an inner reality, refractions from a poet's tongue. Flush out hidden truths in this life and the life to come. My heart is now re-enchanted by heaven's beautiful haunting. The bitter taste of a restless craving has become my sweetest longing.
Viewers, now you see what I mean by dripping with Lewisian imagery. On pretty much every line, there's an allusion to some book or some phrase which Lewis used or would repeatedly come back to. My favorite line, I think because we were doing the Four Loves this season, was "clothed in agape's embrace."
Coming for you, that's high praise. I appreciate that, David. Thank you.
Yeah. One of my questions when I read this, you said prayers for solace I now deploy. So is that your response to the vanishing joy, the zenzuk that as you're just on the cusp of it, it disappears, that it then turns your soul to God? Is that what you're working for?
Yes, those journeys that hinder you pray for those that continue to be more frequent.
Mm.
So yeah, just peace or just joy or stabs of joy that Lewis always says that we experience here and there. So yes, that's exactly what's going on there.
Mm-hmm. And when did you actually write this? How long has this been in the making?
Some of these poems, this poem particularly, it was last year, and but this is probably 2 years worth of poetry, if not longer. I try to take my time and mine out and fetch different words that can convey how I'm feeling and try to do it in a flowery way. And I know that it hopefully connect with someone, by doing that. So, but yeah, it took longer than I want to, but that's what happens sometimes.
Lewis would often speak of being with book or big with book, comparing himself to a pregnant woman that he's trying to gestate this book out. At least we now know your gestational period is about 2 years.
Well, plus I had other books. I was writing other books as well, and so I just try to divvy up those times. But poetry is my first love, and so I try to give more time to that. But I do like writing stories and music, and so I try to pay attention to those impulses as well.
Well, I would like you to read one of your prayers at the end. But before we get to that, could we do another poem? Would you mind picking another one from this book?
I was hoping I could do at least two more, if
Oh, okay,
that's
fine.
fine.
It's even
Excellent.
better. We're getting even more bang for our buck.
I appreciate it. Um, this poem is called Pierced by Beauty. And the idea behind this poem is that when we encounter or surrender to something beautiful, whether it's music, art, poetry, or story, we become enchanted by it and profoundly changed by it if we allow it to do its work properly. Lewis said in The Weight of Glory about beauty, he says, we do not want merely to see beauty, though God knows even this is bounty enough. We want something else which can hardly be put into words, to be united with beauty that we see, pass into it, to receive it into ourselves, to bathe in it, to become part of it. And I just, that quote is so powerful. And so that's
It's a
one.
really wonderful beginning to Lewis, because I think it is probably his best sermon, hands down. Um, the Weight of Glory. There's so many wonderful parts. I think probably my favorite bit is at the end when he speaks about that next to the Blessed Sacrament, your neighbor is the holiest thing presented to your senses. You know, he says
Yes.
we might think a little bit, perhaps maybe too much about our glory in the world to come, but we can't possibly think too much about the glory of our neighbor.
That is so rich. Yes, it is. Thank you for that. So this is called Pierced by Beauty. Pierced by beauty, now I'm no longer the same. It left me naked, laid open, but I am not ashamed. Unraveled in its presence, it aids my myopic vision. Logic and reason are horses that transport meaning to its mission. Pierced by beauty, now open to enchanted worlds, encountering deeper realities where obscure mysteries are unfurled. Satisfied on unearthed longings, I'm reshaped by scarred hands, privy to an insight pointing beyond atoms and molecules that dance. Pierced by beauty, now become awakened to wonder, feeding on the fruit of myth has appeased an authentic hunger. Stealthily, meaning has been suffused through the common, illuminating a charm that's hidden in a secret garden. Pierced by beauty, now see the world as it really is, charged with hallowed echoes from a king that lives. Evergreen leaves tremble from angels passing in flight, piercing hearts with beauty, arousing the dead to life.
That's so great. Would you mind just telling us a little bit about what was its inspiration?
It's just reading Lewis and it just taking time to see the beautiful things of butterfly. My wife, listen to music, just the things that I enjoy. It just when you just relax and just let it take over you, it changes you. And so I just wanted to convey that and hopefully create longing in someone else um, to long for beauty. And that's what this poem came from. So just want to have people to experience what I experience when I listen to music or hear poetry or even a movie, just to be moved and bathed in beauty and, like Lewis says, become part of it. So that's the idea behind that.
And one thing I do want to say that I really like is you do give a few lines at the top of each of the pages to explain a little bit about where a particular poem came from. So I remember when I first got my first book of poetry when I was in high school, and it's from a local poet, and he had written a lot, but no context to any of them. So it was quite a puzzle trying to work out what was this thing even about. And so just a few words really does help. But
yeah, I debated on that because I want the poem to mean whatever it meant to that person, but like you said, sometimes people can understand it, or it might be too obscure, so you just want to try to give them something to hang their thoughts on.
A good place to begin. And my favorite line in there is evergreen leaves tremble from angels passing in flight. It reminds me of a book by an Orthodox writer that I read, and he talks about the title of the book was Everywhere Present and Filling All Things, which is a line from the Eastern Sunday liturgy. And throughout the book, he is saying that a lot of people live in a two-story universe. The idea, well, this is us here, and then God and everything else, everything spiritual is sort of up there. We live here, they're there, and it's very separated. Whereas he was arguing, no, we live in a single-story universe where all of these things are commingled. And that was definitely one of the things that Lewis really brought home to me in all of his writing, the idea that the everyday and the miraculous, the natural and the supernatural, are far closer to each other than we realize. And so to approach the world as something truly magical, you mentioned George MacDonald earlier. That was what he did for Lewis. He said he shut the book and the bright shadow came out of the book and touched everything else. And I think Lewis has done that for many of us, as Malcolm apparently also did for you.
Exactly. And I think Chesterton talks about that as well. So yeah,
in Orthodoxy, he talks about the sun rising, and he compares it to a child that, when you're playing peekaboo and the child goes, again, again. And he says, it's almost like God is going, again, again, at every sunrise.
That is brilliant. Simple, but brilliant. What? Yes, absolutely.
And having a 1-year-old at the moment, I know what that's like. When you're doing something that he finds interesting, just keep doing it. It'll keep him occupied.
Oh yeah, you're an old pro already.
I'm tired, if that's what you mean.
Oh, no.
So you have another poem that you'd like to share?
Yes, this poem is called Pipe Dream, and it's inspired by my favorite poet, Malcolm Guite. I love to see him when he's smoking his pipe and just reading a poem, and that's what I love to do as well. I have this church warden, a black church warden, like Gandalf. I call myself the Black Gandalf whenever I'm smoking and reading. But so yeah, this was inspired by Malcolm Guite, and it's called Pipe Dream.
Hang on one moment. I am ready. You may continue.
Excellent. All right. I sit here with my pipe, and together we dream. I inhale and blow out magic. Now my world is serene. The smoke summons the muse. Now he initiates the craft. Creative thoughts begin to swirl. Vivid words I now draft. I sit here with my pipe, and together we share a dream. 26 letters form a poem inside of my smoke rings. I light the earth with fire in the chamber where secrets lie. Imagination is now ignited when the vapors come alive. I sit here with my pipe, and together we weave a dream. Expressions become corporeal, giving meaning to everything. I breathe in the world through this vessel of my delight. This is what I call heaven, dreaming while smoking my pipe.
It's so lovely. And
So yes,
I love the middle verse where you talk about enkindling fires and the vapors coming alive.
I appreciate that. I try, like you said, Lewis says, and Malcolm, I try to bridge, the world of comprehension or the visible world with the invisible world, the realm of apprehension. I try to bridge those two worlds together, and hopefully they come together and say something important, say something that moves you, and you can participate in this poem while smoking a pipe, and hopefully that you can participate in that and enjoy it as well. So yes.
And the line that I thought was particularly powerful is, you said expressions become corporeal. The idea that these dreaming these dreams, writing these poems, they are incarnational. in a sense,
Yes,
because they are giving form to something which is coming into the world.
absolutely. Yes, that's that's the idea behind that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Funny thing about this, my best friend gave me this. I think it looks really cool. I don't like smoking a pipe. Did it once. I was like, whoa.
Oh wow.
But it looks so
Oh,
cool. So I now just occasionally when we don't get to meet each other very often, but when we do and he's smoking his pipe, I get mine out and I just hold it. I feel smarter immediately.
oh well, you probably need to find the tobacco that suits you. You need to get like some Hobbits blend tobacco or Rivendell. I think you probably enjoy those.
I'd also need to find something to bribe my wife with for allowing me to smell of tobacco smoke, but
Yes, I'm not allowed to smoke in the house, so I have to go outside. But I take that compromise.
you get surrounded by nature. It's more food for inspiration.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I would like to read one more poem, and
Mhm.
this poem is dedicated and inspired by the most beautiful person that ever walked the face of this earth, and that's my wife, Janetta Jones. And this poem is called "Not by Accident." And this is, and I have a few poems, love poems to my wife in my book as well, but this is one I really like. So it's called Not by Accident. I find myself swept off my feet, and now I know there's a God, for you have become my destiny. Your light has guided me out of the fog. Bravely, I cried out for you, dying to embrace your sacred love. I've never beheld a love so true. Now you're all I'm thinking of. You have pierced this fragile heart with pleasure beyond compare. I've become moved with a million tears when our emotions are laid bare. Surely it's not by accident we slipped and fell in love. I know that you are heaven sent, my ravishing angel from above. Surely it's not by accident that true love has found us here. My purpose in life is plain to see because your love is near.
My favorite line there is slipped and fell in love. I never really thought of the whole falling in love thing as well. That could be perceived rather comically, like someone's walking along and they slip on a banana peel and they accidentally fall in love.
Uh, yeah, that's an interesting image that you had there. I never thought about that as well. I just thought that this sounded something poetic and different. But yeah, I like that.
I'm gonna
Comical.
refer to my wife as my banana peel from here on in. I wasn't looking where I was going.
uh, you landed in her arms. That's awesome.
Mm.
Fantastic.
One of the things I do like about poetry in general is it gives a very acceptable means for speaking about emotion. And I'm saying this as an Englishman who I have both of the emotions, hunger and tiredness. And I've got really good at expressing them when necessary. Um, but as I got back into poetry in my adult life, I found that this was suddenly a way that, despite all of my English repression, this was a very acceptable way of communicating and expressing and living again the emotional side of my personality.
Oh, so you embracing the other side of yourself.
Even if I use other people's words, still counts.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Hmm. Wonderful. Well, as you mentioned earlier, you not only have poems in this book, towards the end, you have enchanted prayers. Before we wrap things up with you reading one of them, would you just tell us why did you include a bunch of prayers in a book of poetry?
I so this one guy came to me and was telling me how he was going through something and he really didn't know how to pray. And so I thought, maybe I can be um, that appendage or that's someone that can help someone in prayer, just try to just guide them in their work, whether or whatever they're going through, maybe I can um, assist them, in prayer. So that's the reason why I wanted to do that, and also to help my kids to pray as well. So um, yeah, that's mainly the reason, just to be just giving someone a hand and lead them to um, the presence of God. So hopefully I've done that through these prayers.
Mm. It's one of the reasons that I've always loved, set prayers, formal prayers. Because when I encountered some Christians say, "Oh, never use those," I always do them off the cuff. It's like, yeah, sometimes they're really samey and not that great. And these set prayers are ones that people much holier than I have prayed before, and they've can form a pattern for me to learn how to pray. Even Jesus' disciples, they came to him and said, "Master, teach us how to pray." And he said, "Pray these words." And so I love being able to see how somebody else prays. When you form a new friendship with somebody and you pray together for the first time, there's something very intimate, and there's something very revealing when you get to see how another person speaks to God.
That's a great insight. Yeah, I never thought about that. Their spiritual vernacular to God, and how they express themselves. That's revealing, to them as a person and their spiritual life. So that's very insightful. Yes.
Well, would you mind reading one of them as we start to wrap up?
Thanks. I sure will. This prayer is called surrendering to God's will.
I like this one.
Dear Heavenly Father, it's not within me to surrender to your will without your Holy Spirit, for I am completely helpless under the tyranny of my fallen nature, which is continuously evil and corrupt. Please, by your grace and mercy, enable me to welcome and cherish your good and perfect will for me. I pray that my will and my heart be in concert with yours, so that I may glorify and honor you with my life. Humble me so that I may concede to heaven's agenda while abandoning mine. In your son's name, I pray. Amen.
My favorite line is that I may concede to heaven's agenda and abandon mine. That sounds like a far better idea. My plans are tentative at best.
Yes, and the day I had coming on the program and before, yeah, I was just better off just taking my hands off and let God navigate it, because yes, I am the king of mistakes.
Now, where can people go to purchase a copy of this book?
You go to my website, www.robjonesbooks.com, or you can go to Amazon and you can procure all my books.
Wonderful. Well, I'll make sure that there are links in the show notes. Rob, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, David. This has been a dream come true. I really appreciate this so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. And everyone else, please join us again next week when we'll continue going further up and further in. Cheers.
Further in. Cheers.